FAQs, greenhouses. Your greenhouse questions answered. When can I put plants in an unheated greenhouse? The major secret, at the same time a tip to success, using an unheated greenhouse is to preferably sow seed indoors around the middle of March and then towards the end of April. The seedlings should be transplanted to your unheated greenhouse. What temperature is too cold for a greenhouse? A hothouse must maintain a minimum nighttime temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit or greater, while a cool house sets the minimum of 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature is usually around 90 degrees during the day, year-round. Is an unheated greenhouse frost-free? An unheated greenhouse can keep overnight temperatures as much as 5 degrees Celsius warmer than outside, which will keep plants frost-free in all but the worst of winters. It will also ensure plants stay dry, which greatly aids survival. The following plants are all ideal for growing in a cold greenhouse through autumn and winter. Will seeds germinate in a cold greenhouse? In a cold greenhouse, the air temperature inside greenhouse is just a few degrees above the air temperature outside. As long as you can keep the minimum soil temperature for germination, seeds will germinate in a cold greenhouse. Will a greenhouse keep plants from freezing? During the day, a typical greenhouse will trap heat from the sun, which allows the plants inside to stay warm at night. That said, when winter nights get really cold, frost damage in the greenhouse can occur without added protection. When can I put tomato plants in an unheated greenhouse? In an unheated propagator or unheated greenhouse, sow late February to early March. When planting tomato seeds outdoors, sow late March to early April. How do you keep a greenhouse warm at night? 6 ways to keep your greenhouse warm in winter. 1. Insulate with bubble wrap. First, insulate your greenhouse. 2. Use heaters. A clima-heat is great in greenhouses. 3. Use a thermostat. 4. Circulate air. 5. Ventilate your greenhouse. 6. Raise plants off the cold ground. What temperature should my greenhouse be? About 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. The ideal temperature inside the greenhouse is about 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, so the first and most important lesson is learning how to keep the internal temperature steady. How do you heat a greenhouse cheaply? Cheap ways to heat a greenhouse without using electricity. Mini plastic greenhouse. Placing a rabbit hutch in your greenhouse will help heat it up. Composting hay or straw bales will heat up a greenhouse in winter. Dust bin or old oil drum filled with water saves greenhouse heating costs. Do plastic greenhouses protect from frost? Yes, sometimes plastic is used for frost protection. For instance, on low garden tunnels, high tunnels, garden cloches and greenhouses. You need to be careful that your plants don't overheat when the temperature goes up, because plastic doesn't breathe like garden fabric. Do greenhouse plants need to be hardened off? Plants raised indoors or in a greenhouse need to be acclimatized to cooler temperatures, lower humidity and increased air movement for about 2 to 3 weeks before they are planted outdoors. This toughening up process is known as hardening off. What type of heater is best for a greenhouse? Our picks for the 4 best greenhouse heaters: Mr. Heater Buddy 4000 to 9000 BTU Indoor Safe Heater. Comfort Zone Ceiling Mount Quartz Heater. Britown Oscillating Quiet Ceramic Space Heater. Lasco Ceramic Heather with Adjustable Thermostat. How often should you water plants in a greenhouse? For example, cacti need watered only when they have become nearly completely dry. Other plants, such as most herbs and orchids, will also prefer a few days between waterings, provided that the greenhouse is not excessively hot. As a general rule, do not water your plants until the first couple inches of soil are dry. Does a greenhouse need direct sunlight? Generally, a greenhouse should get full sun, especially during the winter. Site your greenhouse to avoid shadows from buildings and trees, since many plants do best in full sun. However, in especially sunny climates, high-altitude areas, or for shade-loving plants, partial shade can be better. Are mini greenhouses any good? Mini greenhouses aren't designed for every type of gardening task, but for those things they're good at, they're very handy indeed. The These small structures require a great deal more care than a standard greenhouse though, since heat and high levels of humidity can build rapidly. Can I use a space heater in my greenhouse? Electric space heaters, not to mention they are a clean source of heating for your greenhouse. And because they are clean and safe, a majority of gardeners use electric space heaters. They are quite efficient and are designed to quickly heat a greenhouse. Plus, they can be used to heat a small greenhouse. Do plants grow faster in greenhouse? Plants do grow faster and better in the greenhouse because in a greenhouse ecosystem the temperature is more controlled, the carbon dioxide content is higher as compared to the outdoor, which is very important for plant growth. These factors contribute together and make the plants grow faster in a greenhouse. Why are my plants dying in my greenhouse? Humidity. Too much humidity can allow mold spores and diseases to run rampant in your greenhouse. Too little and the plants will die of thirst. Grow them at the same time, or build more than one smaller greenhouse, if space permits. What can I grow in a small greenhouse for beginners? Plants that need heat to produce well can thrive in greenhouses. I start my warm season vegetables inside: tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants, peppers, okra, ground cherries, squash and melons, and move them outside when natural temperatures stay reliably above 50 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. Where is the best place to put a greenhouse? Generally, the best spot for a greenhouse is on the south or southeast side of the house in a sunny area that gets the most sun from fall through winter, November to February in most places. If this option doesn't exist, the next best location for the greenhouse is the east side. Can you use a propane heater in a greenhouse? Propane heaters are one option for keeping your greenhouse warm and are available as both installed heaters and portable units. To maximize their efficiency, you should take steps to reduce heat loss in your greenhouse before turning the heaters on. What is the benefit of a greenhouse? The benefits of a greenhouse include plant protection, climate control, a longer growing season, and much more. From small raised bed solutions to large-scale structures, pick your greenhouse today for your ultimate growing space. What is the best flooring for a greenhouse? The best bet for flooring is a combination of pea gravel and flooring designed specifically for greenhouses. The pea gravel will allow for good drainage, while the flooring will help to block out weeds. Both of these can easily be sanitized with a mild bleach solution in case of disease. When should I remove plants from my greenhouse? Most can be moved to the garden when they have their first 2 or 3 pairs of adult leaves. Some can be planted sooner and some need to wait longer. Zinnias, for example, can be planted after 4 weeks, while dahlias need 8 weeks before they are ready to move outside. Can a greenhouse be in the shade? There is no doubt that the ideal site for a greenhouse is one in full sun. You can shade easily enough, but it is not so simple to provide light of solar intensity. The sun is also an important source of free heat in winter. Nevertheless, you can still put a shady greenhouse site to excellent use. What is the difference between a glasshouse and a greenhouse? A greenhouse is a structure with a glass or plastic roof and frequently glass or plastic walls. Greenhouses can also protect plants from wind, rain and animals. Glasshouse is a form of greenhouse. Glass was once the only material suitable for this purpose, so glasshouse and greenhouse were pretty much synonymous. Does a greenhouse add value to a house? A number of studies have determined that well-designed landscaping can increase the value of a home. Adding a well-designed greenhouse to your property could possibly increase the value of your home, but it could also narrow the interested pool of buyers, as some may not want the added maintenance and expense. Is a polytunnel better than a greenhouse? Purchase price: polytunnels are generally cheaper and require a smaller investment than greenhouses. Sun and shade. A diffused polythene sheeting on a polytunnel helps to prevent heat spots, but you may have to paint greenhouse panels to avoid sun damage, such as leaf scorch, to your produce. What is your ideal size of greenhouses to start? A good size for a hobby greenhouse would be somewhere around a 12 feet by 16 feet. A good size for a greenhouse for commercial purposes would be around a 30 feet by 96 feet. There is one good rule to follow. Always get one size bigger than you think you need, especially if you are using it for personal purposes. Gardeners have a tendency to be collectors, and collectors will soon run out of room. What are some downsides of using greenhouses for growing plants? The building itself is not free. Commercial-grade greenhouses, with heating and cooling, may cost upwards of $20 per square foot, not including benches, pots, etc. Those costs will need to be amortized. If growing for a hobby, those costs would be considerably less. You will have established a barrier between the outside and the inside. That includes the predator-prey relationships among pests and their consumers. Once established, insects, fungi, bacteria can be hard to eradicate since you are giving them near ideal conditions. If controlling temperature, humidity and perhaps light period, you are spending money, much of that money would not be spent on in-ground, outdoor plants. If growing plants to sell, be aware that they will not do as well once they leave the greenhouse. Customers may become unhappy. One hailstorm can cause significant damage to the greenhouse. Failure of a heating or cooling system at the wrong time can result in a lot of damage to your plants, and in long nights or days for you. The common theme here is money. Greenhouses cost money to build and maintain. You will spend more money creating and maintaining the optimum conditions for your plants. Unforeseen, or uncontrollable events can cause losses, which then compound your costs. How do I start an agriculture business through greenhouse? You can do commercial crops using polyhouses, greenhouses. Usually capsicum, cucumber, gherkins, beefsteak tomatoes, cherry tomatoes and flowers like gerbera, carnation, roses are cultivated. Typical polyhouses construction will cost approximately $800 to $1,000 per square meters. Add another $100 if you require fogging, misting. The above cost is for the greenhouse structure. If growing in soil, the expense is a bit less. If you are going to use hydroponics or aeroponics, then the cost goes high. Using soilless agriculture, you will get uniform, consistent and good quality produce. There is a bit of a learning curve involved in soilless farming. You can use nutrient film technique to produce exotic salad crops. Crops such as arugula, lettuce and herbs command a good price in the market. Another alternative to greenhouse is a tunnel structure. It is getting popular recently. Can I start a greenhouse on half an acre? Short answer is yes. A greenhouse is nothing else but an enclosed structure that tries to provide favorable conditions for plant growth and offers limited protection from pests. Only commercial growers can afford to develop greenhouse farming on half an acre or more as a business venture. It requires large investment, a thorough business plan with full details on cost-benefit analysis, time required for break-even of the business, and funding sources for continuous supply of all inputs, reliable solar or grid power, good quality water, all equipment for growing crops, monitoring tools for measuring water quality, temperature, relative humidity, air quality required for greenhouse farming, trained labor and a farm technician to supervise the operations, market outlets, supply chain, processing, packaging and cold storage facilities, transport delivery trucks, waste management, resource recycling structures, and so on. Is it cheaper to build or buy a greenhouse? It is much cheaper to buy an existing greenhouse. The better question is whether is better, economically, in the long run to buy or build a greenhouse. That is much harder to answer. Greenhouses are usually built to accommodate a particular crop. You build a tomato greenhouse differently than a gerbera greenhouse. When you are buying a greenhouse, you have to either grow the crop it was built for or imperfectly fit your crop into that greenhouse space. It is not always worth it. Is putting a greenhouse in your backyard worth it? Yes, absolutely it is worth it, especially if you don't spend a lot to set it up. Here is a great design using 216x52 cattle panels from any farm supply, 4 2x FAQs around the base, a handful of zip ties, 2 16-feet strips of trim wood 1/2 by 1/4, a bunch of staples and staple gun, a roll of 4 mil poly 10 by 25 feet, and a zip wall adhesive backed zipper door. All in about $95. The real kicker is to set this up 6 weeks before your last frost date, with 6 bales of straw inside. Add some fertilizer and water and the bales will heat the greenhouse free, and then pull the plastic off when the weather turns nice and plant the bales, and use the cattle panels as a trellis for tomatoes, cucumbers and beans or squash. It is fun, easy, and very attractive looking. A very simple but rewarding DIY project. What's the best method for building a small, cheap greenhouse? The least expensive way to build a small greenhouse is to use PVC pipe for the frame. You will need to use wood to frame out for the door. You can pick these materials up locally at the lumber yard. You may even be able to locate some used materials to do this. The most important part is not to skimp on the covering. The films that you will find locally are more than likely not UV protected. This film will be destroyed within 1 year. Believe me, this is something I learned a long time ago from personal experience. If you intend to use the greenhouse for more than a year, you should use 6mm 4-year pull film with a UV protection. Don't miss our latest video uploads. Subscribe today. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up, activate the bell to be notified immediately when new food gardening videos are available. Food Gardening YouTube channel.